Welcome back to Talking Sports with Brandon. This is the Week 17 recap video. A very emotional Week 7 based off of the Monday night game, which I'm sure everyone who is watching this video saw the events that happened. And we'll talk about it and just talk about the extent of what happened and also, which is hard to think about, but the football side of it as well, though, in terms of what does happen with that game. But we'll also talk about the other stuff that happened in Week 17, obviously on Sunday, and what happened in terms of more teams got eliminated, and what teams are, clinched a playoff spot, and what games in Week 18 are now coming down to see who's going to make the playoffs. So we'll start with what happened on Monday night. I'm recording this the next day. All the coverage so far throughout sports media through today has just been about this, which is, I think, that takes precedent in a situation like this. And again, if you most likely know what happened, you saw it, you heard about it, you read about it, but in case you didn't, Damar Hamlin, the safety for the Bills in last night's Bills-Bengals Monday night game, first quarter, routine tackle, nothing crazy, just T. Higgins across the middle for about 10 yards, something like that. Makes the tackle. Again, doesn't seem anything crazy, nothing, you didn't really suspect anything to be wrong. And he stands up, and then he falls down, and play stops. And we didn't really see that. I was watching this game live, obviously. I think they showed the play that happened, and then it kind of cut away to, Joe Burrow or someone else, just like one of those kind of solo shots on one of the guys after the play, and you didn't see him fall down. And then the next thing we see is just that a player is down, they're looking at him, and maybe you thought, he just got injured. That's usually what happens. You see a guy down like that. He somehow he hurt himself. Didn't even know who it was at first because there was already people around him by the time the cameras got back to him. And you're just thinking it's a normal injury. They go to commercial break. They'll do that. When you realize a player is actually down. It's not like he can just get right back up. You go to commercial break. You come back. Usually that player's off the field, and then play resumes again. This case was different. Obviously, as soon as the commercial break ended, again, it'd been a minute, 2 minutes, whatever it was. Again, you kind of just think, all right, play's now going to start again. It comes back from commercial, and he's still on the ground. And it seems, again, this situation still seems somewhat not normal, but at least more normal than what did transpire. And you're thinking, all right, maybe he needs a cart, maybe his leg, and maybe his head, something like that. He needs a cart to come out. They're kind of waiting for that. They're still doing tests, and they're still trying to work on him. So they cut to another commercial break, which again is you've seen happen before, where they do go to 2 commercial breaks because they thought it was something minor and it turned out to be more serious, so they had to go to another commercial break. So we've seen that before. So then coming off of that second commercial break, then this is where you really don't know what's going on because the commentators don't know what's happening. You can't really see much because all the players are around him. They're completely huddling him. You don't know what's happening, but you see all the Bills players kind of just in distress and just crying and not like just really like shocked and just like appalled at what they're seeing in front of them. And again, we have no clue what's going on. They cut to another commercial break. They come back from that. We get a little bit more news. By now we know what the guy is, Damar Hamlin. We still don't know exactly what it is, if it's a head injury, if it's what really it is, but it's something really serious. And then they cut to another commercial break, and so after the 4th commercial break, we finally know at least most of what's going on, and we see an ambulance out on the field. Both sidelines are fully on the field. Everyone's quiet in the stadium. We hear that CPR was being given to him on the field, and that they transported him into the ambulance, and the ambulance took off. And I think it was I remember seeing the times that they've been showing, but he got injured at like 8:55, and I think almost 20 minutes later was the time that he was put in the ambulance and was taken out of the stadium. So for 20 minutes, that was the scene. It was him lying there with 100 people around him. and no one really knew what was going on. If you were on social media, you start to see a little bit more things. People in the stadium could tell you a little bit more. But again, that's basically what we knew. After he was taken off, you know, they said, now this is the really weird part, but they said they had 5 minutes to warm up and then that they would start playing again. And it didn't seem right in the moment, and it seemed weird, but that's what they said. And both teams, the Bengals started warming up. Again, it was a Bills player, so the Bengals obviously still felt it, but it wasn't one of their guys. They started warming up. They were on offense. They showed Joe Burrow throwing passes, but the Bills, none of them were. They weren't doing anything. They were just sitting on the bench, still walking around, kind of again still in a state of shock of what just happened. And it was pretty clear and obvious that the Bills couldn't play. I don't think the Bengals could have either, but the Bills for sure could not have played. They didn't even want to warm up. And then it happened that both coaches, met together, and then they decided to take both teams off the field. It was temporarily suspended at that point, so it wasn't over. The game wasn't over. It was just taking a break. But once that happens, you can't play. You couldn't play anyways because, again, if it was just a normal injury, you could keep playing again. You'd feel, really bad. You'd be in a really devastated mood and everything rushing through your head, but you could still play knowing that it's a normal injury, it's a leg injury, it could be a really bad concussion injury, but you know that the guy is going to be okay. But once you see that it's a CPR situation, I mean, they're 2 feet away from him watching someone give him CPR on the field for at least 10 minutes or something, and working on his body and getting the ambulance to come right to the field. That just, I mean, you never see that on a football field. You never see that really anywhere in your life. That could be the first time someone's ever seen that up close in their lives, and it's not just some random person. It's someone that they've shared a locker room with the entire year. He was on the team last year, so it's a guy they've known and a guy who's on their team. So it made sense. They suspended the game again temporarily. Went in the locker rooms. You keep hearing more information about what's going on. And then I think it was about almost 40 minutes later, I think it was 35 minutes later, they officially postponed the game, which the NFL announced. And it made, again, you knew it was happening. You knew they were not going to come back on the field. The sidelines were packing up all the equipment. There was no way they were going to finish that game. So again, around 10 o'clock, almost an hour, a little bit more than an hour after he originally got hurt, or, the situation that happened, the game is postponed. So currently as I'm recording this, again, it's the next day, he's still in the hospital. It turned out to be he had a heart attack, which is what I thought at first. Once they said he was giving CPR to him and the situation got a lot worse, I said, and I was thinking about it, but I also said it to friends that I think he had a heart attack. Because it wasn't, after he made that tackle, he didn't stay on the ground. He stood up pretty normal. He got up on his own power, stood up, and then a second later just fell backwards, fainted, passed out, whatever it was. But clearly a heart attack. But that's what I thought right away. And that's what it turned out to be. There's been other examples of this happening. I think I saw Chris Pronger in hockey. This happened. He got hit with a slap shot. Stood up and then fell back down. He had a heart attack. In soccer, this happened a couple years ago where a guy had a heart attack on the field. So it's happened before, but on Monday Night Football, national stage like this, definitely a different type of situation. And currently he's still in the hospital. I think they said critical condition, still not stable. So we don't know any updates yet. Who knows when we'll get one, but we'll see what happens. But just a really scary situation. I mean, from what it turned out to be, again, we go to the first commercial break, you're thinking it's going to come back to play, and all of a sudden it goes from that to this game is postponed, and this guy's life is in the hands, to be honest. I mean, you don't know. It seems like he's doing, I guess, better, but it's, again, a critical condition, not stable. I'm not a doctor or anything, but it's really up to the people of, I think, Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati Hospital. So it's a really scary situation. If you check social media, it's the first thing you'll see. from last night, from today. Probably until we hear an update, it's going to be the only thing you see on social media, to be honest. And that's the way it should be. So again, really scary situation. And yeah, that game, to kind of revert to the football side, again, that's secondary at this point. And if you're listening to the broadcast of that, that's all they were talking about. It's all they really cared about was him and how he was doing. And again, that's what you should care about. But to try to go to the football side of this, in terms of this game, it was going to be a huge game. It was, again, week 17. Two teams that were fighting for the 1 seed. It would have been, if the Bengals win this game, they have a real shot at the 1 seed now. If the Bills would win, the Bengals are out of the 1 seed, and it's between the Bills and the Chiefs. It's a huge game for seeding, for who gets the bye, for whatever. And now with it being postponed, they said it's not going to happen this week. The NFL already announced that, and they said there's no changes to the Week 18 schedule. So what does that mean? I'm not really sure. And honestly, who knows if the Bills could even, you would assume that by Sunday they'd be able to play their next game. But if there's not an update on Hamlin, then who knows, honestly. So that's something that, with it only being Tuesday, you would hope by Sunday there's news of what happened. But, whether it's good or bad, who knows if they do play that game on the Week 18 game, and then also what happens with this game, which is a huge question, which they're going to have to figure out. Again, it's not happening this week, and it's not happening in Week 18. So when does that happen? Because playoffs start. These both teams are in the playoffs. It's it's a huge game, so that's going to be a big situation to figure out. But we'll have to see what that happens. Maybe by the time the next video comes out on this channel, that situation will be resolved, but that's the biggest football question. But again, that could wait until we exactly know what's happening with him. So, and what, that was obviously the biggest news, not even in sports, just the biggest news, I think, in general, in terms of just what was happening on Tuesday, Monday night, but also just Tuesday throughout the day. That took over every single news station across the nation. So, yeah, that happened. Again, if you watched it live, which I'm sure you probably did, scary. If you saw everything on social media, all the clips, the news reporting, everything like that, definitely a scary situation. But we're going to try to go through the rest of this, in terms of the 5 picks that I made for Week 17, and then just talking about teams that got eliminated and what we're looking forward to in Week 18. So I went 3-2 this week. We started with the Bears-Lions. Took the Lions -4. The Lions needed this game. They needed to win this game to give themselves the shot at winning in Week 18 and making the playoffs. So they were playing the Bears. I took the -4. They destroyed the Bears 41-10. Again, the Bears, when I said at the beginning of the year that they were one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the NFL, at first I still thought it to be true, but the way that they were playing and winning some of these games somehow, it technically wasn't. You remember the first game of the year, they beat the Niners in that crazy weather game. Obviously, if it's a normal weather game, the Bears don't win that game, but they beat them. They beat the Texans. And then they beat the Patriots. So, they're, out of their first, 7 games, I believe that is, 8 games, they got 3 wins. That wasn't going to stay. And if we look at their record right now, they're 3-13. So, yes, it's exactly what I thought. Fields is done, and that's when Fields wasn't even playing well. They won those 3 games. Ever since I guess the last game, the Patriots game, was his first really huge game of the year. But ever since he's played really well. And now they've traded players on defense, and I think the team's coming down to what they originally were projected to. But it's funny how the better he's played, they've actually not won these games. And they've been close. And, whenever they need a game-winning drive, he's thrown an interception or the defense can't make a stop. But, yes, it was the Lions are a way better team than the Bears. There was no doubt in my mind that they were going to win this game. It was just about the cover, which, again, the Bears have kept games close. And, they did come out this game and get the opening touchdown. But, from that point forward, it was an onslaught. They were even up 10-7. And after that, They obviously got outscored 34-0. So yeah, it wasn't close after that. I still never really thought it was close to begin with, even with the Bears showing some life early in this game. But yes, Lions needed that. They're now 8-8. Huge matchup with Green Bay next week, which is actually Sunday Night Football. The NFL did announce the schedule, and we'll talk about it in the next video. Exactly which games matter to all of us, and which games can complicate other ones. The NFL tries to make teams that have similar situations and one that maybe needs the other team to lose. They want to have them playing at the same time so that if you have one team playing at 1 o'clock, one at 4:25, and the team at 4:25 needs the team at 1 o'clock to lose, and they lose, and then the team at 4:25 is automatically in the playoffs, you'll just rest your guys. You wouldn't risk getting injuries. So you want to have them play at the same time so that no one's resting starters, no one has an advantage over another team. Now, the thing for the Lions is that with them playing at the Sunday night game, they're in the battle with Seattle for that last playoff spot. And also Green Bay. Green Bay wins this game, they're in. Detroit needs to win this game, but they can also have Seattle lose earlier, and also get in. So it's a different. It's tough with them being a Sunday night game. They definitely could have made the Jaguars Titans game the Sunday night game, because that's a guaranteed. Whoever wins that game is in the playoffs. But that's not the best rating game because it's Jaguars-Titans. It doesn't really appeal to the audience like an Aaron Rodgers division matchup. But still, in terms of just a guaranteed get in or go home, the Jaguars-Titans game should have probably been the Sunday night game because, again, something had happened in the early window that affects the current Sunday night game right now. But we'll talk about that when that happens. So, first game was a win. Second game, Panthers-Bucks. Again, another huge game. This was basically a winner-go-home game in Week 17. I took the Panthers plus 3.5. I thought they would win this game the way that the Bucks have been playing. The defense has been okay, not great, or not really good, to be honest, but the offense has been awful. They can't move the ball. When they're only good in no huddle situations at the end of halves, they can actually move the ball and look like a somewhat competent offense, but for the rest of the time, they can't do anything. But this game was a flip, and it really started out that the Panthers looked like they were going to win this game. They're up 21-10 in the fourth quarter, and they were up the entire game. And they go up 7-0, 14-0, 14-7, 14-10, 21-10. Really, kind of controlling this game. The Bucs offense looks the exact same, where they really can't do anything offensively. The one touchdown they had, which was a theme in this game, was a 63-yard long touchdown pass to Mike Evans. But again, other than that, they didn't do anything. Fourth quarter happens. It all switches, like I said. And the two other touchdowns both go to Mike Evans, 57 yards and 30 yards. So they were going deep on him. Mike Evans had 200 yards in this game, 3 touchdowns. The Bucs defense kind of came alive in that fourth quarter. Obviously, only limited them to a field goal, which came with 50 seconds left, where the Bucs are up 9 points. Panthers rather go field goal touchdown or touchdown field goal. They go field goal, miss the onside kick. Obviously, Bucs win the game, win the NFC South. They're 8-8. Panthers are 6-10. Panthers are out of the playoffs. Bucs are guaranteed the 4 spot and host a playoff game. But this, is this trend going to continue for the Bucs, where they put up 30 points? There hasn't not been a lot of times this year where the Bucs have put up 30 points. I personally don't see this happening, continuing. Now, next week, they're going to rest their guys, obviously. But for that first playoff game, which could be Dallas, could be a different team. We'll talk about that. But whoever they play in that game, look, you still have Brady. You still have the greatest quarterback of all time who, if it's a close game, you got to feel really confident that you're going to win that game. But as soon as, and that's why it was a little bit impressive in this game, even though it's against a way inferior opponent than who you would play in the playoffs, they were down 11 points and came back and won the game. But can that really continue in the playoffs? Because, again, once they're down double digits, I don't see them coming back in double digits in the playoffs, because they're going to play better teams with better defenses and better offenses. And I don't see it happening. Can they come out early and get to a big start? Possibly, but that has not happened all season long. So I think they can be dangerous if it's a close game. If it's a 10-point or less game, they can win that game. But as soon as it gets over 10 points and it starts getting a little bit late, I don't see them winning. I just think they play better teams that can run the ball, that can move the ball, and the defenses are better. Carolina's got a decent defense, but you got to have a pass rush against the Bucs because Brady can't move. The offensive line's beat up, and the offense, you got to be able to run the ball. And there's teams in the playoffs that can run the ball. So I will see what happens, but in terms of my pick for this week, I thought Carolina would win. And again, you're up 21-10. I mean, you probably should have won this game. But they lose, so that was my first loss of the week. And like I said, Panthers out of the playoffs, Bucs win the NFC South. Third game, Browns, Commanders. Another, you really had to win this game. If you were Washington, obviously Cleveland's out. I took Cleveland +1, though, because of the decision that Ron Rivera made to start Carson Wentz in this game. Obviously they traded for Wentz in the offseason. It wasn't really the best kind of trade, best kind of quarterback to get. Probably not, but they made the trade. He starts the season not great. He was kind of putting up numbers, but they were kind of garbage time numbers, or they were just losing in general. Gets to the point in the Bears game where, that was a disgusting, awful game. If you watch that, it was a Thursday night game. He gets injured in that game, and from that point forward, it was Taylor Heineke, and he's not the greatest quarterback in the world. He's not. But he makes plays. He has that locker room. And it just seems like good things happen when he starts for that team. And, the playoff game against Tampa 2020, they had no chance of winning that game, and he almost won that game for them. So it seems like whenever he starts, good things happen. The last couple weeks have been a little shaky, but when your quarterback has the locker room and has the confidence of the team, it's hard to go back to the other guy. Even if the other guy is probably talent-wise a little bit better, it's hard to go back to him. And he hasn't played, Wentz hadn't played in over, basically 2 months that he hasn't played in. You put him in this game against the Browns, you should win this game. I don't care if it's Wentz, if it's Heineke. You should beat the Browns. They have nothing to play for. They can barely do anything offensively anyways. And you're at home. And, you really just got to win this game, and the Browns are playing for nothing. There's no excuse in losing this game. Wentz was awful. He was 16-28, 143 yards, 3 interceptions. Just couldn't do anything. And I think that decision to go with Wentz, that made me go Browns. You can't start him in this situation. I don't care. And he's been pushing to do that, Rivera. He'd been pushing to move Heineke out of that starting spot and go to Wentz. I don't know if it was pressure because of the trade in the offseason. If he really thought Wentz was going to play better. Again, Heineke wasn't playing great, but he was keeping them in the game and giving them a chance to win these games. You never had a chance in this one with Wentz. You didn't. Despite going up 7-3 early, you let up a couple touchdowns to Watson, who's been awful. He wasn't even good in this game, but he still threw 3 touchdowns. So it was an inexcusable loss for Washington. They're out of the playoffs now when it looked like they had a real shot at making the playoffs and probably better than the Giants at one point, to be honest. They look like the better team, and now they're out of the playoffs. Giants are in the playoffs. Rivera, who knows if he gets fired? I don't think they can. You're kind of reading stuff with the owner change happening soon. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen this offseason. You probably can't fire him because when the new ownership comes in, you're going to fire him anyways. So or whoever the new guy is that they hire. So, and you have the old ownership has to pay him. They're not going to want to pay him. So there's so many different things that are going to happen. I don't see him getting fired for those reasons. If the new owner was going into next season, he would be fired, no doubt. But since that isn't happening, unless something crazy happens, I think he'll stay there. But personally, I think he should be fired he's done a good job with that team. There's not a lot of talent, and he's done a good job. But some of the decision-making that he has made is questionable at best. He was kind of the proponent for that Wentz trade. It clearly hasn't worked out. He went with his guy in a must-win game, and you basically got blown out, even though you only lost 24-10. You basically got blown out by the Browns. And yeah, for me, as soon as I heard that news of Wentz was starting, no doubt was going with the Browns. I didn't care if they didn't have anything to play for. he's not a good quarterback, and the team doesn't respect him as their starting quarterback. It's just you just have to know that. I mean, if I know that from an outsider, how does the head coach not know that being in that locker room every single day? So that was third game. Niners Raiders. This was the game actually. If the Niners did lose this game, Washington technically still had a chance to make the playoffs, but the Niners did win. But in terms of the spread, I took the -10 against the Raiders. And this is coming off the news that Derek Carr is benched and not even active for the last 2 games of the week. So clearly they're going to move on from him in the offseason. I think we all expected that anyways, but he's not finishing out the season. They went with Jarrett Stidham. We'd seen it, a little bit. I think it was with the Patriots and I think the Eagles. I think, but nothing. He never started the game in his career. Never really even heard of him as being like a backup for them or doing anything for them this season. And the Raiders are -10. No doubt I was taking that. The Raiders, they're still in it for the 2 seed and the 1 seed, which helped with Sunday, and we'll talk about it. But so they still needed this win. Huge win, obviously, in terms of getting a potential 1 seed this year. And -10 with Stidham starting, I thought no doubt. But Stidham played probably the best against this defense they've seen so far this season. He was 24-34, 365 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did the 2 interceptions, but he was moving the ball up and down the field against a defense that had not been giving up yards, points, touchdowns, anything, especially this last 2 months or so. And even though the second half was mostly just field goals, at least in the fourth quarter, it was just field goal, field goal, field goal, field goal. He led them down the field for touchdown drives, for big field goals, for big point opportunities. And I just was not expecting that. Adams had a huge game. He was throwing the deep ball against them. Maybe that's a way to beat San Francisco, is by going deep against them. But the thing is that with that pass rush, they did a really good job because, you got to get it out quick, but the offensive line was holding up for him to go deep. So if your offensive line does hold up against them, I guess you can go deep on them, but I was not expecting them to put up 34 points. Now, the Niners did win, like I said, 37-34, but never would have expected, even Derek Carr, I wouldn't have expected to put up 34 points, and definitely not Jarrett Stidham. So, I guess I can't be mad because who would have expected, Stidham to put up 34 in this game? But like I said, the Niners did win. They go to 12-4. And they still have a chance at the 1 seed, which I'll talk about after the 5th game, which was Rams-Chargers. I took Chargers -6.5. The Rams, they put up the big performance against Denver, but as we've seen with them, when Baker first started, they beat the Raiders, then kind of get blown out against the Packers, then blow out the Broncos, then they play the Chargers. They're definitely an up-and-down team. And the Chargers now basically fully healthy. Joey Bosa was back for this game. Williams is fully healthy again. Keenan Allen's fully healthy again. You could see the firepower that this team has. And this was the team I expected at the beginning of the season. If you remember, I picked the AFC West to be the Chargers, then the Chiefs. And I believe if the Chargers stayed healthy, they would win. I don't know if they'd win it because the Chiefs do have, 12, 13 wins, but I believe that they would have a much better chance. They're 10-6 right now, and that's with no Slater for basically the entire season, basically no Bosa. Allen and Williams have missed multiple games. Derwin James has missed multiple games. So they've missed a lot of guys on this team, and that's not even to include, those are the stars on the team, and and J.C. Jackson, who they obviously was their big free agent signing at corner. So they've missed all those guys for multiple games this season, and that's not even including some just rotational guys, starter guys, who were kind of backups to those guys. So I think if this team was healthy, which again, every team deals with injuries, but they were dealing with not only a lot of injuries, but just at key positions. Tackle, defensive end, corner, wide receiver, those are the most key positions besides quarterback in the NFL. So, but they went 31-10 in this game. They kind of just did what they had to. Herbert wasn't crazy. It was only 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, but Eckler had 122 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Mike Williams made some great catches. The defense they've been the best defense in the NFL. I think arguably better than San Francisco over the last month. And that's what you need when you're going into the playoffs. One side of the ball has to be hot. And considering the fact that their offense has always had the firepower, it's always been their defense that needs to get hot. And they've been smoking hot the last month or so. And if they keep playing like this, now with Bosa back, and you give him 2 games to get his legs under him, and then the playoffs start, you got to watch out for the Chargers. Now, it's going to be tough in the AFC with Bills, Bengals, Chiefs, but if they upset one of those teams, I mean, I would not be surprised if this team is in the AFC Conference Championship game. Would not surprise me at all because of the way Herbert can play, can make plays down the field in crunch time situations. If the defense continues playing like this, or at least maybe not at this level, but very close to this level when it comes to playoff time, they're a very dangerous team. And this is what I and a lot of people expected at the start of the season. Injuries just derailed that and delayed it until now. So definitely got to watch out for LA, the Chargers, in the playoffs this year. So we went 3-2, like I said, moved to 39, 43-3. 1 week left. If we go 5-0, we can get over 500. If we go 4-0-1, we could be 500. We'll see what happens. But let's talk about some other games that impacted what happened in Week 17. So we'll start with the Eagles. Eagles lose to the Saints 20-10. No Jalen Hurts again in this game. A huge game because they could have locked up the 1 seed in this week. They're 13-3. Like I said, San Francisco's 12-4. And Minnesota, who had a huge game against Green Bay, knowing that Philadelphia lost. Philadelphia was the 1 o'clock window. San Francisco and Minnesota were both the 4:25 window. Minnesota, knowing that they had a really good chance. Again, they already lost to Philadelphia, but they would have been tied record-wise, and who knows with the last week. Huge chance to get the 1 seed, or at least get a better advantage over San Francisco for the 2 seed, if anything. They play Green Bay. They get destroyed. They lose 41-17. Very similar to the Dallas game where the offense has nothing going on for Minnesota. Turnovers. It was a little bit different in terms of Packers had a kick return touchdown, a pick 6 touchdown, but it was similar in terms of the offense had nothing going on. Defense is getting shredded, and they were down. They got 2 touchdowns late. The score was 41-3 with 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So, it was over before it even started in this game. And Minnesota they're 12-4, one of the most fraudulent 12-4 teams. I think Pittsburgh from a couple years ago is more fraudulent because they really had less talent. Like, the defense was winning all those games. The reason that Minnesota wins these games is that the offensive talent, their defense is awful, Minnesota's. But it's crazy how with that much talent on offense, they could still get behind in these games like crazy. Like, Cousins I think he was 0-6 at one point with an interception. He was like 3 of 11 at one point, something like that. He finished 18 of 31. He threw 3 interceptions in the game. But Packers, they're hot. They're 8-8. They, like I said in that Lions game, the Packers just need to win next week and they're in. Doesn't matter. They don't need someone to lose. They don't need all these tiebreakers, things like that. Packers win next week, they're in the playoffs, which is crazy to think about because, as I've been saying throughout the season, I didn't think this team was good. I still don't really know how good it is. I think that they just really hit their stride. The timing is perfect. The defense is playing lights out. Like, that's really the big thing, is that the defense stepped up. Like the Chargers, the defense stepped up. And the offense is doing enough offensively. Rodgers isn't going for 300-plus yards and making all these spectacular throws, hitting guys down the field. It's the running game. It's key passes that are getting them into good positions on the field, and the defense is making plays. If that continues, that's a scary team because if they're in the game, you have Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's the difference between, with the Bucs and the Packers, between all these other teams, is that they're not the best teams. They really haven't been consistent at all this season, but if it's a close game and it's Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, arguably 2 of the 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time, you got to be scared to death playing in that type of game. If your team is going up against one of those teams, and you could win 14 games, 13 games this year, and you'd be scared to death if it's fourth quarter and it's 21-17 and they have the ball or something. You would be scared. So. They're a scary team in terms of that sense, and I can tell you right now, if they're that 7 seed, and it's right now. It's Minnesota, it's San Francisco for that 2 seed. You got to be scared now. If the Packers do end up getting it and San Francisco is the 2 seed, and again, it could be Philadelphia, it could be Dallas, it could be Minnesota, it could be all 4 of those teams. But let's say it's San Francisco. Rodgers he's like never beat San Francisco in the playoffs. You think about the last couple times they've played, he loses to them at home, he loses to them on the road. So definitely that's his kryptonite. So that, San Francisco, that's a good matchup for them in terms of just that sense, the historical sense. But Minnesota's definitely got to be scared. Philadelphia, I think, the Packers played them, even though the Packers lost that game, that was kind of when this run started. They played them really close, and that's when they were fully healthy. So that's got to be a little bit scary as well. Dallas too. Rodgers owns Dallas, so it would be a scary game, no doubt. If you're playing the Packers in that first wild card game. But yes, those are the big things in the NFC. So we'll see. With the Cowboys winning this week, Eagles losing, Niners winning, and Vikings losing, it's going to come down to Week 18. That's what it comes down to in terms of the seeding. In terms of 1, 2, 3, and 5, we'll see what it turns out to be. The Giants won this week, so they're locked into the 6th seed. They play the Eagles in Week 18, so we'll see if they rest or play people. Looks like they're going to rest because the line's like 13 points, but we'll see what happens. We'll know when the next video comes out if they're resting or starting guys. Teams that needed a win. Like I said, the Lions needed that win. The Seahawks needed the win. They win 23-6. The Packers needed that win, 41-17. AFC Steelers needed a win. They beat the Ravens 16-13. Ravens, they'll make the playoffs, but they're out of the AFC North, competition in terms of winning that division. I guess we'll see. The Bengals game didn't finish, but they're going to be out of that. So that was a huge win for Pittsburgh. Patriots needed a win. They beat Miami 23-21. Patriots win next week. They're in. They play Buffalo. Miami, they need a win. They need someone to lose. So, and Tua is not playing in Week 18. So you could probably say the Dolphins will not make the playoffs. Unfortunate because if Tua doesn't miss any time this year, right now they're at 8 wins. I think they're easily at 10 wins, probably 11. So unfortunate for that, for that sake of the season. But yeah, they definitely a flawed team anyways. But the no Tua has just killed them this year. He's he's missed like 5 games, 5 games, 6 games. He's gonna end up missing. They're winning at least 3 of those games in my opinion. So huge loss for Miami, but big win for New England. And again, it's going to set up for a huge Week 18 with a lot of winner go homes. Win this game, team loses that game, you're in, you're out. So we'll talk all about it in the next video. But yes, a lot of things happen in Week 17. Like I said, we talked about the first part of it, then the games part of it. Yes, we'll be back for the next video, which will be the preview to Week 18, the last week of the season, and then the video after that will be the playoff predictions. We'll go through the entire bracket and make that video. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.